The promise of power. When people talk about loyalty in business, they like to dress it up with words like commitment, ownership, trust. But those words don't capture the smell of stale coffee at 2 a.m., the pulse of fluorescent lights when everyone else has gone home, or the silence of an empty house when your kid has already gone to bed without you. For 4 years, that was my rhythm. My name is Sarah Bennett, and at 38, I was the Director of Operations at Apex Innovations, a tech firm that processed payment infrastructures for hedge funds and private banks. I had built the operations department from a scrappy team of 10 into a 60-person engine that never missed a beat. Every workflow, every contingency plan, every late-night call with our partners, especially Hudson Capital, our biggest client, ran through me, and all of it, every sacrifice was driven by a single promise. Sarah. Charles had said, his hand resting on the polished mahogany table of his corner office, "When the time's right, you'll be our next vice president of operations. You've earned it." Charles Morgan, my CEO. My mentor, my father-in-law. It wasn't nepotism, at least not at first. When I married his son, Michael, Charles didn't hand me anything. I had to prove myself from the ground up, and I did. Every metric backed me up. Employee retention, client satisfaction, profit margins, efficiency rates. I didn't just maintain Apex's backbone, I rebuilt it. And so I believed him. I believed him when he called me the company's spine. When he said he couldn't have done it without me. When he smiled at me in board meetings, proud and paternal. I believed that hard work, merit, and loyalty still meant something, but belief is dangerous when it becomes your compass. At home, my husband Michael would sometimes look at me like I was fading. "You're burning out, Sarah," he'd say. "You've got to slow down." I'd laugh it off even when my hands trembled from exhaustion. "Just until the promotion's official," Charles said next quarter. Michael would nod, supportive but distant, as if he'd heard the line too many times. And he had. Every year brought a new crisis, an internal system failure, a client escalation, a merger. Every year I pushed harder. The irony, I loved my job. I genuinely loved the structure, the sense of purpose, the way numbers obeyed logic even when people didn't. Especially people. My anchor was Olivia Reed, Apex's marketing director, and my best friend since our early 20s. Olivia was charisma bottled into a human form, always confident, always a step ahead in any conversation. She was the kind of woman who could make a boardroom laugh in 10 seconds flat. She also knew me better than anyone. Late nights in my office, we'd share takeout noodles and gossip over campaign reports. She'd tease me about how married I was to the company. "Sarah, seriously," she'd smirk, "if you don't get this VP position, I'll personally storm Charles's office with a PowerPoint presentation on your behalf. You'd need at least 10 slides, I'd reply, smiling. She'd grin back. "Honey, I'd make it animated." Her support felt genuine. Her laughter effortless. I never questioned it. I never thought to. When the board meeting invitation landed in my inbox that Monday morning, the subject line read, "Quarterly Review and Organizational Announcements." My heart thrummed. This was it. The timing lined up perfectly. 4 years, a completed fiscal overhaul, client renewals secured. I even wore my good Navy suit, the one I'd saved for the day it happens. Charles greeted me outside the conference room with his usual warm smile. "Morning, Sarah. Big day." I smiled back. "You could say that." Inside the room buzzed with quiet expectation. The board members took their seats. Olivia sat next to me, her perfume, jasmine, and ambition filling the air. She reached under the table, squeezing my hand. "This is your moment," she whispered. I squeezed back, grateful. Charles began the presentation with his signature calm authority. He reviewed the quarterly performance, commended the operations team for record efficiency, and then turned toward me. "And none of this," he said, "would have been possible without Sarah Bennett's leadership." Polite applause filled the room. My chest swelled. This was it. Then his voice shifted. "But as we continue to expand, we need a new generation of leadership, someone who represents the innovative direction we're taking." I froze. "So it gives me great pleasure," he continued to introduce our new Vice President of Operations, Emily Harper. The name hung in the air like a wrong note. I turned my head slowly. A young woman barely out of graduate school stood up, radiant, confident, smiling at everyone. Emily, Charles's niece. 26. MBA. 10 weeks at the company. My pulse stuttered. Applause erupted. Beside me, Olivia's hand was still in mine, but this time her grip tightened, almost performative. This can't be real, I thought. But her whisper came first. "I didn't see this coming, Sarah. It's unfair." I looked at her, searching her face for sincerity, but she avoided my eyes. When she clapped harder than anyone. Something inside me cracked, but not loudly. Quietly. The kind of crack that only you can feel. After the meeting, I wandered down the hall in a haze. My vision tunneled. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was breathe shallowly and smile mechanically at anyone who passed by. Then I heard voices. Through the thin wall of the executive lounge, Charles's voice carried warm and casual. Sarah's too rigid. Great at maintenance, but she lacks boldness. Olivia agrees, she said the same thing when we discussed this. Olivia. My chest went cold. Emily's voice hesitant, but Sarah built everything. I don't want her to feel. Charles interrupted with a chuckle. She'll be fine. At her age, she won't start over. Olivia knows she'll stay. Loyalty's her weakness. The laughter that followed was soft but deafening. I stood there, hand against the wall, the air gone from my lungs. The fluorescent light above me flickered. In that moment, every late night, every ignored dinner, every promise, it all rewrote itself in my mind. They hadn't rewarded loyalty, they'd exploited it. That night, I didn't sleep. Michael sat beside me on the couch, the TV, playing something we weren't watching. He turned to me. You're quiet. I told him everything, Charles, Emily, Olivia, every word of that overheard conversation. When I finished, he looked furious. I'm going to call him right now. I shook my head. No, this isn't your fight. Sarah, I mean it. This is mine. He saw something in my eyes, then something sharper than anger. Maybe it was the first flicker of resolve. He nodded. Then make them regret it. I smiled faintly, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Oh, I will. The next morning before the office woke, I drafted an email. Not a resignation letter, not yet. A message to my team. Subject: gratitude and growth. To my operations family, the last 4 years have been the most challenging and rewarding of my career. As Apex evolves, so must we all. I've always believed in environments that value integrity and hard work, and I intend to continue seeking that alignment wherever it leads. With respect and pride, Sarah Bennett. I hit send. Within an hour, whispers spread through the company like wildfire. By lunch, Hudson Capital had reached out politely, inquiring about my future. By sunset, I knew the seed of my next chapter had already been planted. That night, as I looked out the window of our apartment overlooking the city lights, I whispered to myself, they think I'll stay. They think loyalty is a cage. Let them. Because I wasn't planning to stay. I was planning to rise. The morning after my email went out, the office buzzed with a kind of brittle politeness. People smiled too brightly, their eyes darting away the second I met them. They all knew. Charles avoided me for a full day, probably hoping the tension would dissolve on its own. It didn't. By the second morning he summoned me to his office for a quick chat. The same mahogany table, same framed photo of his yacht on the Hudson, same faint scent of cigar smoke clinging to the air. Except now the silence between us had teeth. He gestured for me to sit. Sarah, about the announcement, I cut him off. You don't have to explain. The decision's been made. He leaned back, feigning regret. You've been invaluable. Truly. But Emily represents a new era. Investors want to see youth agility. I almost laughed. Agility. I'd spent 4 years plugging every leak in this ship, while he and his board drank champagne on the deck. He continued, we still need you here. Emily will depend on your guidance. You'll remain the director of operations, perhaps with a bonus structure. I stared at him. You're asking me to babysit your niece. Don't be dramatic, he said softly, like he was doing me a kindness. This could still work out for you. For a moment, I saw the man my husband had always wanted, approval from the patriarch who played God with everyone's ambitions. And I realized something terrifying. I'd once sought that same approval. Not anymore. I'll think about it, I lied. I stood up, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. Good, he said, relief crossing his face. I knew you'd be reasonable. I walked out without another word. Behind me the glass door closed with a soft click that sounded like an ending. In the elevator, my reflection in the mirrored wall looked almost unfamiliar, hair pulled, tight eyes hollow. I looked like someone who'd given everything to a promise that never existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Lunch, I owe you one. For a split second I thought she might actually apologize. But some part of me, the part that had heard her name slip off Charles's tongue in that lounge, knew better. Still, I went. I needed to see her eyes when she spoke. We met at Cedar and Bloom, the cafe we'd haunted for years during deadlines and brainstorming sessions. She was already there, perfectly composed, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, her smile flickered. "Sarah," she said, standing to hug me. Her arms were cool, perfumed, practiced. "You look amazing for someone who just got blindsided." "Flattery doesn't suit you," I said, sitting down. She laughed lightly. "Look, I was as shocked as you were. Charles didn't even loop me in until the last minute." I stirred my coffee, watching the liquid swirl. "That's funny. He said you agreed with him." Her face went still for half a second, then softened into pity. "You must have misunderstood. You know how he twists things." "Do I?" I said quietly. Her voice tightened. "Sarah, I didn't have a choice. You know how this company works. If I'd argued, he would have turned on me too. I was protecting my department." I leaned back, studying her. "So you sacrificed me instead?" Her lips parted. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" She looked around, lowering her voice. "I thought maybe you'd stay. You're safe here. Everyone respects you." That word "safe" tasted like ash. She didn't see me as strong. She saw me as harmless. "I appreciate your honesty," I said, finally standing up. "But next time you use friendship as a shield, at least admit it's armor for yourself." She flinched, her composure slipping for a heartbeat. "Sarah, wait." But I was already walking away, the cafe door swinging shut behind me. That night I made my decision. I drafted my resignation letter, concise, polite, and pointed. "Dear Charles, I appreciate the opportunities Apex Innovations has provided. After careful reflection, I've decided to pursue new challenges aligned with my principles of transparency and merit-based leadership. My final day will be in 2 weeks. Sarah Bennett." Before sending it, I copied my team. Not to burn bridges, just to light the truth. The effect was immediate. By noon, my inbox flooded with messages from stunned employees. By evening, Hudson Capital's project director Daniel Carter called. "Tell me you're not actually leaving Apex," he said. "You're the reason we trust them." "I am," I said simply. "But maybe you'll trust me somewhere else." There was a pause, then a quiet chuckle. "Keep me posted." The next morning, Charles stormed into my office, red-faced. "Sarah, what the hell is this? My resignation. You can't just leave. Emily needs guidance. You're making us look unstable." I looked up at him calmly. "You said it yourself, Charles. Apex needs new energy. I'm just stepping aside to make room." He ran a hand through his hair. "At least finish the Hudson rollout. Hudson's already aware I'm leaving. They'll decide for themselves if they want to continue." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of losing me but of losing control. "You'll regret this," he said. I smiled. "Maybe, but not as much as you will." The 2 weeks that followed were a storm behind glass. I kept my head down, finished my deliverables, and watched the cracks spread. Emily struggled visibly. She second-guessed every decision, overcorrected every process. Clients noticed, deadlines slipped, and Charles grew more erratic, calling emergency meetings, blaming miscommunication and growing pains. Meanwhile, I met Daniel Carter in a quiet bar downtown. He listened as I outlined an idea I'd been quietly shaping for months. Nova Solutions, a fintech startup specializing in personalized payment systems using adaptive analytics. Apex had laughed off the idea when I'd proposed it before. Daniel didn't laugh. "You're ahead of the curve," he said, his tone sharp. "If you can pull this off, we'd invest $5 million to start." I blinked. "5," he nodded. "We believe in execution. And you, Sarah, you execute." For the first time in weeks, I felt something new, not anger, not bitterness, momentum. The night before my final day, I stood by the window again, city lights blinking like distant code. Michael came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You sure about this?" he murmured. I nodded. "I've been sure since the moment Charles said I'd never leave." He smiled against my shoulder. "That's the part he'll never understand." My last day at Apex was strangely quiet. People avoided eye contact, as if proximity might burn them. Olivia stopped by mid-morning, hovering in the doorway with a forced smile. Leaving without saying goodbye, I sent a company-wide email. I said, "That's not the same." "No," I agreed. "It's honest." She hesitated, then sighed. "You're angry. I get it. But someday you'll see this wasn't personal." I met her gaze. It was entirely personal. "You made it that way." Her mask slipped just for a second, hurt flashing behind her composure. "Good luck, Sarah." "You too," I said. "You'll need it." When she left, I felt strangely calm. Like a storm had passed and left behind perfect clarity. I didn't look back when I walked out of the glass doors that afternoon. But I did notice the reflection, the faint silhouette of Charles watching from his office window. He didn't wave. Neither did I. 2 weeks later, the first wire transfer from Hudson Capital hit my new company's account. Nova Solutions LLC was officially alive. I built my team quietly, 3 trusted engineers, 1 project manager, and Rachel, a meticulous accountant who'd followed me from Apex. We rented a small space in Midtown, cheap coffee, bright light, raw ambition. Every late night there felt different. The exhaustion had purpose again. By our 3rd month, we were already onboarding our 2nd client. By the 4th, Apex began bleeding contracts. Daniel called one evening half amused. Charles called me personally, begged us to reconsider. I smiled into the receiver. And did you? I told him. Nova had our loyalty now. The words sent a shiver down my spine. Not from guilt, just symmetry. Then came the unexpected call. Olivia. I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. Her voice trembled. Sarah, I need to see you. Why, Charles? He's falling apart. Emily's drowning, and he's making me cover operations and marketing. I can't do it. I was wrong about everything. I said nothing. I know I don't deserve it, she continued, but I can help you. I have files, internal reports, emails. Proof he's been falsifying numbers to protect Emily. Investors would tear him apart if they saw this. I stared out the window at the city skyline. And what do you want in return? I want out. I want to work for you. A long silence stretched between us. Finally I said, meet me tomorrow at 7. Don't be late. The next evening she arrived at my office, smaller, humbler, but alive with quiet energy. She looked different, hair pulled back, exhaustion carved into her expression. She handed me a USB drive. Everything's on there, she said. Emails, reports, audit trails. I took it. Why now? She looked down. Because you were right. Loyalty isn't weakness. It's a mirror, and I hated what mine reflected. For a long moment I said nothing. Then, if this is real, you'll work here. But under probation. You'll earn back what you threw away. She nodded, tears welling. Deal. That night I opened the files. And I smiled, not from cruelty, but from justice. Inside were months of buried data. Charles had manipulated performance reports, hidden client losses, even rechanneled budget funds to Emily's department to prop up her numbers. The empire he'd built on legacy and pride was already crumbling. He'd just been too arrogant to see it. Within weeks, the board at Apex received an anonymous leak. Charles was forced to resign. Emily quietly disappeared from the company directory. And Apex, the empire I'd built brick by brick, started to burn. I didn't start the fire, I just stopped putting it out. 6 months later, the name Nova Solutions was everywhere. What started in a cramped midtown office now occupied 2 full floors of a glass-walled tower overlooking Bryant Park. The reception sign gleamed in white chrome, Nova Solutions, where integrity scales. Every time I walked through those doors, I felt the hum of something I hadn't felt in years, belief. Not in promises, but in myself. Rachel met me in the lobby one morning, tablet in hand, her face glowing with numbers that once would have made me lose sleep. Client 3 confirmed, she said. Velocity Bank just signed, that's $22 million in annual processing. I smiled. And Apex, they're still scrambling. Rumor says their board's considering a merger just to stay solvent. A quiet satisfaction ran through me, not sharp like revenge but steady, earned. You know what the best part is, I said. Rachel grinned. They did it to themselves, I laughed softly. Exactly. Olivia had kept her word. She came to work every day at 7:30 sharp, no makeup, no posturing, just focus. She handled client outreach, refined branding, and when the press asked about Nova's culture, she said the same thing every time. We don't chase trends, we build trust. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I kept her close but not too close. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't about erasing the past, it's about controlling what it can't touch anymore. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me during team briefings, eyes full of gratitude and caution. I never acknowledged it. That was enough. Then came the email from the FinTech National Summit organizers. We would be honored to have Sarah Bennett, CEO of Nova Solutions, deliver the keynote speech on innovation and leadership. It felt almost poetic. The same circles that once whispered about my resignation now invited me to speak about resilience. Michael found me reading the email that night, smiling quietly. You know what they call that, he said. What? Full circle justice. He wasn't wrong. The morning of the summit, the sky over Manhattan was the kind of steel blue that feels like clarity. I arrived early, walking past banners flashing Nova's logo between panels for giants like Stripe and PayPal. People nodded, some whispering my name as I passed. It still felt surreal. Backstage, a coordinator clipped a microphone to my blazer. "You ready, Miss Bennett?" I looked into the mirror one last time, hair tied neatly, eyes calm, posture steady. "I've been ready for years," I said. When I stepped onto the stage, the lights hit like a sunrise. Rows of faces stared back, executives, analysts, journalists. And in the third row, I saw him. Charles Morgan. Older. Thinner. Wearing the same tailored suit that used to intimidate me. Now it just looked heavy on his shoulders. Beside him sat Emily, her expression brittle. Olivia, seated near the front with the Nova team, caught my eye briefly. I saw pride there. Maybe even peace. I began slowly. When I started in this industry, I said I believed loyalty was the highest form of integrity. I believed if you gave enough of yourself, time, effort, trust, you'd be rewarded with fairness. A pause. The room was still. I was wrong. A ripple of murmurs. Loyalty without recognition isn't virtue, it's self-erasure. And sometimes you have to lose everything to see that. I told them about rebuilding from scratch, about choosing transparency over titles, about how the systems we create should empower people, not exploit their belief. The words weren't rehearsed. They came from a place deeper than anger. From survival. By the time I finished, the room rose in applause. Not polite, but thunderous. A standing ovation. I smiled warmly, not triumphantly. Then I stepped off the stage and walked straight toward Charles. He stood as I approached. For a second he looked like he might reach out to hug me. Then he didn't. "Sarah," he said, voice rough. That was powerful. "Thank you," I said simply. He exhaled, searching my face. "I misjudged you. I thought you were safe. Turns out, you were the one thing I couldn't replace." I met his gaze evenly. "Apex didn't fall because of me, Charles. It fell because you thought stability was weakness. You mistook endurance for obedience." His eyes dropped. "You're right. There was genuine regret there, too late, but real. I hope you find peace," I said. "But don't ever confuse silence with forgiveness." He nodded slowly, accepting the verdict. Emily lingered behind him, looking smaller than I remembered. She avoided my eyes. I didn't blame her. She was never my enemy, just another product of privilege untested by consequence. Outside the venue, cameras flashed, journalists shouted questions about Nova's next moves. I answered a few, smiled through the chaos, and then slipped into the car waiting at the curb. As the city blurred past the tinted glass, I finally exhaled. For the first time in years, my reflection didn't look tired, it looked alive. That evening, back at the office, the team celebrated with champagne and takeout sushi. The energy was contagious. Music played from someone's laptop, and laughter filled the space. Olivia approached with 2 glasses, handing me one. "To Nova," she said. "To second chances," I replied. She smiled faintly. "You really do forgive, don't you?" I met her eyes. "No, I remember. That's how I never repeat it." She nodded, taking the words as they were meant, truth, not threat. Later, when everyone left, I stood alone in the office, the city glittering below. I walked to the window and touched the glass, cool against my fingertips. The skyline reflected back towers of ambition, lights of sleepless pursuit. Once I'd thought power meant sitting at the biggest table in the tallest building. Now I knew better. Power wasn't about control, it was about creation. The ability to build something that couldn't be taken from you. My phone buzzed, an email from Daniel Carter. Subject: "Congratulations, just watched your keynote. Hudson couldn't have chosen a better partner. Here's to building the future without the ghosts of the past." I smiled, closing the phone. The ghosts were gone. The future was mine. Outside, snow began to fall, light, unhurried. The city looked softer, almost forgiving. I pressed my hand against the window one last time, and whispered the words that had carried me through every betrayal, every sleepless night, every rebirth. They built walls to contain me, I built doors instead. And as the lights of Nova reflected across the skyline, I knew this wasn't revenge. It was redemption.